So behind me is my '07 Trailblazer SS. It's the same one that I had the video on the build, the performance build for this car. And I got to thinking when that was done, I drove the car, I like it a lot. The problem with this car is the transmission, and I've gone through 2 transmissions already. We're about to put a 3rd transmission in. The car's got, I'll say it, it's got too much power, at least for the transmission. I could go through and do a 4L80 swap or something else. But this car is done. It is where it's going to be in terms of performance, and I'm just going to ease off it a little bit and try not to break it annually at this point. If you can see it, the car to my left back there, that Trailblazer kind of peeked out in the corner, is the turbo Trailblazer, which will become the 1500 horsepower supercharged Trailblazer with a sequential transmission to fix this problem with the 4L60s. And so that's where the power is going to go. And so this car, I got to thinking, if we dial back to 1991, when I was in high school, I was what you call a basshead, and not in the way that you may think, in the way that I liked big bass in my car. And so back then, I would shove a bunch of speakers in my car and try to make it sound good and do marginally okay, and it never quite sounded great, but it had a lot of bass, so I was happy. I was the happy 17-year-old with bass in the trunk. And I actually did some competitions too, and I got a 3rd place here and there. But the point is, I divorced myself from the car stereo world for a good bit of time, like I did for the whole car world for a good bit of time. And I got back in, actually went and got trained at Mobile Solutions for car stereo installations and enjoyed doing it. So I bought a bunch of gear for this car after we had all the performance stuff done. And like most projects that I start that I'm in charge of, they start to sit and gather dust, and I started to get frustrated with myself for not having enough time to invest in the project. And I don't help myself either by taking on 7 projects at once. So I had been watching James Taylor, who is High Voltage Car Audio. He's JAT4011 on YouTube. I think he's JTHVAC on Instagram, and I'll stick them in the description, those links. But the point is, watching him do his work, it became clear to me that like me doing anything, fractionally as good as he could do in like 10 times the time was not a good use of my time. So I decided to reach out to James and say, hey man, I've got this gear, I've got this kind of vision for the project. Will you help me get it to the finish line? That was a month ago. And here we are, in May of 2021, with him having had the car for all of a month, and the entire project is done. So all the gear that I bought, all the ideas that I had, became a unified vision for he and I. And what's funny is I actually did make progress on this car. It wasn't as if I did nothing. I wired the whole car. I got speaker adapters done for all 4 doors, was very proud of myself, spent probably 20 hours of work on this car, getting wiring done, the head unit installed, all the adapters finished, and everything ready for the subwoofer and amplifiers to be installed, and then got in this rut where I had no time to deal with it. So again, took it to James, and James's first response is like, we're going to tear all that out. And talk about soul crushing for a moment, and then like, okay, as long as it's done, I'll deal with it. It's fine, and let the experts do their thing, and which he actually absolutely is. So with that being said, I want to show you the final product here of what James did, and then kind of walk through the unified vision and what the components are and what we did, and why it was the right path. And the reason it was the right path is because it's done, right? I'll take a project that's done. I'll pick a project that's done versus one that's done perfect, although this one is perfect any day. So here is the final product of High Voltage Car Audio's work. So the system breakdown here starts in the front, but we're going to do it from back here. And I've got a Kenwood ddx6902S as a head unit in this car. We've got single RCAs coming to the back, powering a D6-1200 audio control, which is acting as both an amplifier for the front stage and a DSP. So all the signal goes to that audio control D6-1200 and then splits off, both going to the front speakers. So in the front, I've got a Focal set, and it's the ES165 KX2s, and that's a 6.5 and a tweeter. In the 6.5 is actually in the front door, and the tweeter, you know, James put in the dash in the stock location for, I guess, what you call a tweeter in the stock sense. And again, I had originally the 6.5 and the tweeter both in the door, and I was very proud of it, and he promptly rearranged it, which is fine. And so I've got the 6.5 and one up front. In the rear doors, again, also powered by the D6-1200, I've got an 8-inch Rockford Fosgate mid-bass in each door. And actually it does a rear fill pretty well for that mid-bass range, but it's a full 8 in the door. And I was proud of myself when I was able to fit that 8 in the rear door. And then James redid it all again, which is fine. The D6-1200 then feeds these two Rockford Fosgate T2500.1s, and these two are linked with the BD-Link cable and acting as a single big 5,000 watt amplifier on a single PSI Platform 5 18. And again, I had spec'd all these components because I thought they were cool and what I needed and wanted, and I went through all the impedance math to make sure it all would work. But you know, James and High Voltage Car Audio was pivotal in making it all come together and making it look professional, sound great. You know, everything about it was what I wanted it to be, but I just didn't have the time and, to be honest, the expertise level to do it. And so from that Platform 5 18 comes all the sub frequencies, obviously. Below the two Rockford amps sits a limitless lithium battery. And so we actually did a battery delete on this car, so there is no front battery in the front stock location. And we put a single bigger lithium here because we needed the extra power to power the 5,000 watts plus the 1,200 for the audio control into the 18. And so I was kind of on the fence about it. I thought I'd like add another lead acid, but honestly, I thought it was kind of a cool thing that we made the front battery go away, and it's all in the rear now, underneath the amp rack. All serviceable, by the way. You can just pull the amps up very easily, get to the battery, and he thinks through all of this stuff as he's designing the system to make it so that it's serviceable long term. Additionally, if I wanted to undo it all, it's hilariously simple. It's literally unbolting stuff and pulling it back out to get back to stock. So not something, while it consumes the whole trunk space, it's not something I can't easily undo if I feel like selling the car, because I did want to keep the car, I don't say stock, but I wanted to keep it looking stock and be able to go back to stock if I ever needed to. We were able to integrate in the nitrous tank also where it was in the original configuration when I bought the car. So that was cool. And just little things like keeping the angle of the nitrous tank fed the angle of the sub enclosure in the amp rack. And so just attention to detail was really spot on this build. Redid the whole underhood with what he calls a battery delete, which is actually very cool. We'll get some shots of this while I'm talking. It removes the stock battery, and in its place places essentially a form that looks like the battery with a fuse block on top for power distribution. So it takes over all the functions that the battery had. It provides a positive and a negative, and then provides a fuse spot for all of the car stereo components, close to the source of power, alternator-wise, right? And runs 2 single-aught gauge cables for power all the way back to the back to connect to that limitless lithium battery, and provide ground as well, but tidies everything up under the hood, and it looks really, really clean. I did luckily have a aftermarket alternator from US Alternators already installed, a 250 amp, so I didn't have to upgrade that. And so there wasn't a lot done under the hood, but what was done looks really good and provides a solid foundation for the car and for the complete system as it sits right now. Thanks again for watching, you guys. Again, I couldn't be happier with this build. James took all my ideas and integrated them with his own and made something that I absolutely appreciate. And it's one of those things too where getting the project done is so much better than having just the idea. So if you can find someone like James to make your projects actually happen, it's a huge win. So I'm going to leave his Instagram and his YouTube channel, along with the ddxauto Instagram and the CT Performance Instagram and YouTube channel links in the description. And I appreciate all the feedback, so by all means, give me some feedback. And obviously like, subscribe, and all that BS too, so I can get some more followers. But beyond that, I will see you guys next time.